Welcome back to the Screenshot Podcast, where we discuss digital minimalism, connecting with the community, and how living the old-fashioned way might just solve all your modern problems, or at least many of them. This is episode 4, and today's guest is Matt from the YouTube channel Transicity. I found Matt's YouTube channel, and the first thing I was intrigued about is the fact that he's a little bit older, you know? He doesn't look it, as you can see. He looks young and fresh at the ripe of his age. But yeah, he's recently married and actually recently became a father too. So let's start there, Matt. First of all, congratulations. Huge achievement to get married and become a father as well. What has changed the most for you since that happened?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Probably the biggest thing, because I've been with my wife more than 10 years now, and we were probably 6-7 years dating before we got engaged. So the getting married part, nothing's really changed at all that much, apart from our tax returns and medical forms and all that sort of stuff that you have to file everything jointly. In terms of lifestyle, because we're already living together at that point as well. So we already owned property, we have a dog together. So the getting married part was definitely not something that had any significant impact, at least from a surface level. I think emotionally, for me anyway, really, and I told her this the day after, just my love for her just kind of elevated a level. And it's a bit hard to explain, but just because I felt this is it now, it's permanent. But the physical and the day-to-day stuff doesn't really change. Definitely the biggest change and the biggest impact has been having a kid. Your whole life just gets flipped upside down at that point. And I don't think there's anything that you can really do that can prepare you for it, to be honest, because every day is different now. And it's very hard to describe, but it's just different in almost every way. That has definitely been one of the biggest life-changing things that's happened for me. Yeah.
Awesome, man. That kind of echoes, every other person who has a kid. They're like, as soon as you have a kid, they become the first priority, and you realize your life is just run by their schedule, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Very cool, man. And a bit of a build on that. How do you think becoming a father and becoming married and everything has affected your take on this male self-improvement space that I suppose that we're part of? Do you think it's something that's is positive? Is it are we focusing on the wrong things?
I think overall it's positive, and I think overall it's definitely heading in the right direction, particularly and again, if we're just talking about male self-improvement, it focuses a lot on accountability, responsibility. I'm literally responsible for another life. If I disappear for, me and my wife, if we disappear for 24 hours, she could die, So I think that's the height of responsibility. It kind of, and I guess it really feels like I'm being tested on a lot of the concepts and everything that I've been learning and been trying to improve upon over the last several months, years, however long. Being calm in situations, for example, prioritizing your mental and your physical health, not sleeping. Sleep deprivation is a torture method for a reason, and it can really mess with your mind, which I've noticed. And just a quick funny story, because I'm not working at the moment, so thankfully I've got all this time off. But my team, because I'm invited to their Christmas lunch, and it's this Friday. But stupidly, a month ago, because it's the same day but just different months. So last month, this Friday, I actually turned up to the Christmas lunch, and I called this girl that I work with, and I'm like, "Where are you guys?" Because I got there, pretty much bang on, and I just thought, maybe they're running late. It's fine. But yeah, 10-15 minutes later, I'm like, where is everyone? This is ridiculous. I can't be the only one here 15 minutes early. So I ring her up. I'm like, where are you guys? And she's like, what are you talking about? It's not till next month. And I thought, fuck me. So yeah, you are very prone to making stupid decisions. You're very prone to not being your best. So I think how I am now would be so much worse if not for self-improvement. But yeah, overall, it kind of feels like everything I've been studying for so far has literally just been studying, and now I'm finally being put to the like an actual real test of, you know, mental fortitude, physical fortitude. And obviously I'm a bit sick at the moment, but still having to push through that and be resilient and be able to help look after your family. It's very tough, but very rewarding at the same time.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's an interesting story, but I can definitely relate to that on on many levels, being there at the wrong place and the wrong time and everything. Yeah, I guess again to build on that, what do you think the self-improvement space could use more of? You know, I suppose I think it kind of seems like we'll always be in our 20s where we're trying to build muscle, and that's like the number one priority, and we're trying to like build a business and everything. But clearly you're doing really well, and from what I gather from the context there, you've got like a full-time job, and you're still thriving, right? So tell us about maybe some things which aren't necessarily spoken about in the self-improvement space, which you feel like could be very important for anyone who wants to be a father or a husband one day.
I think that's the goal of most guys, to be honest. I think it's only the really bitter, chewed up and spat out by life type of guys who have completely given up on dating altogether. And that doesn't usually happen until you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. And that's a lot of the, MGTOW crowd as well. The people who, have been divorced and, have had kids and then having their whole lives like taken away from them, and they're paying child support or whatever. That bitterness doesn't usually come till later in life, I guess. What I wanted to focus on, like with my videos and my channel. I mean, I covered general self-improvement stuff, but I think you're right. Like there aren't that many guys out there who are in my situation, with kids or even married as well. There's only one or two other guys I follow that I know is actually married. And that's, it's kind of, it's a bit sad in some ways, because definitely it does change your perspective on a lot of things. It forces you to sort of grow up and mature a lot quicker than you might be ready for. So, but all the concepts and all the basics are the same. It just, when you talk about accountability and responsibility, all that stuff, it's just, you're not just talking about yourself anymore. You're talking about you and your partnership with this other person. So it's more about being less selfish and more looking at your life as a part of something bigger. I think that's, everything else I think is pretty much the same. I think it's good to, meditate and work out and read books and all that stuff, regardless of your relationship status. So I don't think being with anyone changes that necessarily. The only impact I think that it has is you might have less time to do it. That's because you can't just afford to be selfish and say, oh, well, I'm just spending the whole day by myself. If I do that now, I get very angry looks from the wife. So that needs to be a conversation in advance. If I want to do that, or if I want to go out and make a video or spend some time editing or something like that, I have to tell her in advance, hey, I need like an hour tomorrow, I need an hour here, you're going to have to look after the kid during that time, is that okay? It's more of a negotiation, whereas if I was single and didn't have any of those other responsibilities, just like, fuck it, I could just disappear for a week and no one would even know or care. So there's definitely those advantages and disadvantages, but it's all a balance, I think. And as I said, I think the basics of the self-improvement concepts apply to everyone. Doesn't really matter at what stage of life you are. So I'm glad that all those basic things are covered.
Interesting, man. I love what you said about your life isn't just about you. You have to connect with other people, and obviously, like, it's a big advantage. I'm kind of repeating what you said, but it's a big advantage that when you're in your late teens, your 20s, you do have the freedom to go and do that. But I definitely think even if you're not necessarily in a long-term relationship, doing things like, like practicing gratitude, helping your dad like clean the car, helping your mum like do gardening or cook some food or whatever, I think that's a great stepping stone, right, into kind of doing things which you don't necessarily get personal benefit from, but in a weird way you do feel very, very accomplished, and you feel like you're, when you're making an impact. I think there's not very many feelings greater than that. When someone's smiling because of you, when someone's eating a nice meal because of you, I think that's such a beautiful experience, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. So the next thing I want to talk about is video games. So obviously the first time I went on your channel, just like anyone does when they go on anyone's channel, you go to videos, you click on the most popular, and I saw there was some Pokemon videos. So I want to talk about that. You know, do you still play video games? Was that a completely a thing of the past? And what do you think? Yeah. Just tell us about your video game journey, I guess.
Yeah. So to answer the first question, do I play at the moment? No, I probably haven't played anything in probably 6 to 12 months actually. But I grew up on video games, going back to the other part of your question. So, and you name it, like Game Boy, PlayStation, Nintendo 64, PC, GameCube, Xbox, like I had all of those consoles, and I loved them. Just, I was always able to, jump between games, and it helped because I was always very introverted as well, especially as a kid. So like I could just spend an entire weekend just locked in my room, just playing like one game after the other. And that for me was like a perfect weekend. So I got into it quite heavily. But I first gave it up when I was, it must have been 18, 19. When I started going to work, I kind of realized, okay, this is a bad habit. It's going to hold me back. I need to stop. And I think I did for probably a good 6 months, just because I started sort of demonizing it in my head. Because I thought, I'm an adult now. I have to go to work and be responsible and all those memes. So I gave it up for quite a while there. And then just slowly I've gravitated to and from them over the years. And I think it was probably 7, 8, 9 years ago that I actually made like the videos of some of my gaming things, and pretty much what you can see at the moment, what's left, like, because I went through and deleted a lot of my old gaming videos. But yeah, I played like so many different things like The Sims, Pokemon, Grand Theft Auto, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, all like, yeah, just a lot of different games, and I love them. And for me, it was more like a nostalgic thing. Once I hit, I think it was about a 20 odd sort of age mark, I never bought any new video games because I saw it was kind of becoming like a very predatory cycle almost. Like you buy a game, you play it, and a day or two later you finish it, and then you kind of just discard it and you never do it again. And then it just becomes like a consumerism cycle where it's like, okay, cool, the next game, the next game, the next game, the next game. And every year or so, it's not just the next game, it's the next console. So I kind of saw that happening, and I just thought, this isn't a healthy cycle to be in for the rest of my life. So that's kind of what put a stop to it. So even like a year ago, if I was into video games again and playing, I would only be playing games that I already own from 10, 15 years ago. So I don't own any modern games whatsoever, which, yeah, I don't know if you can see even, but, oh no, there you go. I don't know if you can see, but on the bottom of my screen there is like all my old CD games.
Oh, cool.
Not all of them, obviously, but yeah, there's a few there. Like there's The Sims and Star Wars and just Diablo 2. Like I just used to pour hundreds or thousands of hours into some of these games, and I did really love it, but I do understand the criticism of it, being that they're super predictive, that they're a time sink, and they kind of fill your brain with that placebo sense of achieving something when in reality you're just not. So that's why I kind of have a very arm's length relationship with video games now, because I realize the damage that they can do, and especially if you do it long term. But yeah, if I can't fully knock them either, because like I said, I'll always have that bias towards them just because I grew up on them, and I really look back and I can say one of the highlights of my childhood was playing video games. So yeah, it's a bit of a, not love-hate, but you know those like a two polarity extremes basically. Yeah.
Interesting, man. Interesting. And I love that you only play old games. Like in the intro of this podcast and every podcast, we say we like doing things the old-fashioned way, and I think there's something about playing like old video games, or writing a letter rather than a text message, or like putting a vinyl in a record player rather than just loading up a Spotify playlist. There's something again really special about that nostalgia and that like old feeling. So I respect you for doing that, man. And yeah, I agree. I think this whole kind of echo chamber of video games are bad, they're going to ruin your life. I mean, like obviously, just like with anything, if you overindulge, it's going to be bad. But if you everything, like people do it for a reason, like you've got memories of video games. You grew up on video games. I played Minecraft as well growing up. I was big into Minecraft, and again, like it was like you could argue I wasted time, but I also, like a lot of my best friends now, I used to play Minecraft with them, and we still like talk about it and joke about it, and they don't really play video games now. I don't really play video games, so I suppose it's almost like as long as you've got other things in your life coming in, like okay, I want to exercise, I want to build a better physique, then automatically things are going to have to fall away. And I guess as long as you realize, okay, this is my disposable time activity, and whenever things are too busy, I am going to have to sacrifice it. And I think that's a very healthy way to be.
Yeah, definitely. Because I don't see video games as being any worse than, say, watching a movie. Because,
exactly.
Your average movie is 2 hours. So what's the difference between watching a movie and playing a video game for 2 hours? I think the only main difference, I guess, well, actually, there's probably a couple, but with the movie, once the movie ends, that's kind of it. Whereas you play a video game for 2 hours, and especially if it's like a story or like a mission or something, like that's not a lot of time. Generally, if you're going to complete a video game, you need to put in like multiple very long sessions to do it. So, but again, if you're someone who watches a movie, say every week or every couple of days, like at night on the couch after work or something, and you're, I guess, wasting that time anyway, then yeah, what is the difference? Like you might as well be playing a video game. And I'm never going to be one of these people who say, oh, it's good for your memory and good for your reflexes and stuff like that. I mean, it sort of is. Like, yeah, maybe by like that much, but all the people who say that are kind of just coping, I think, because it's like if you want to work on your reflexes, there are specific reflex exercises you can do that are going to be 10 times better than playing video games, for example. And same with, testing your memory. Like there are specific memory exercises you can do that are going to be 50 times better than playing video games. So the people who justify it and say, oh, but, I'm working on these other dexterity skills, like very rarely does any skills attained in video games translate into real life. As you probably know, like just because you're good at Call of Duty doesn't mean someone can give you a gun in real life. And you know what I mean? You can go like shoot people up. Like it's just like, it's not how it works. So I think you just have to recognize that it is very similar, but at least the one positive thing that I will say about video games that movies will never be able to replicate is the interactivity. It's like, because you are the main character in video games most of the time, whereas the movie is sort of being experienced and is playing with or without you, whereas the video game can't play itself. It like literally needs you and relies on you to take the character or whatever through the world, and you interact with it and experience it through your own actions. So that I don't think can ever be replicated anywhere else. So so I'll always put video games over watching movies, and it's definitely better than watching porn or scrolling through social media. I think it's better than that, but obviously it's never going to be as good as, say, exercising or going out with friends. So yeah, you just got to pick and choose your priorities, I guess.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, a couple of things I want to pick up on there. First of all, the idea of story. Like, I love that, because the more long form something is, the more like concentration it requires, and the less of a quick dopamine hit you get, and more of like a realistic dopamine hit. It's almost like you could read a book summary, or you could read the book, and even though you might not necessarily get much more from the book, just simply by thinking about that idea for longer, it makes you more accountable and makes you more engaged. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess rather than having a cope, this helps my memory, this helps my reactions, like having no cope and just realizing, okay, I am doing this for fun, and just accepting that, such a more healthier way to do it, because you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna have fun for the next 2 hours, and I'm not gonna feel guilty about it. You know, it's almost like watching a movie or
sorry.
That's all right, man.
Or if you're, there you go. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
It's all right. The seasons are changing. It's happening to everyone, man. Yeah, it's almost like you go to a birthday party, and even if you're on like a diet, but it's like your son's birthday party, and you eat a piece of cake, and you don't think, oh, this is fine, it's gonna fit my macros because it's healthy cake. No, it's cake, man. Just eat it and then move on, and then get back to your diet the day after. You know, that's fantastic. Let's talk about social skills and connecting with community. That's another thing we try and promote here at Screenship. So you live in sunny Australia, if I'm right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Amazing. Are you in a big city, a smaller kind of community?
I think in terms of the country, it's probably one of the smallest cities. It's Perth. Population's like just over a million, I think. So it's decent enough. But in terms of like other bigger cities, like on the East Coast, yeah, it's relatively small.
Just thinking now, I suppose like cold approach and things like that have probably not been a priority for you that much, because you've been dating your current wife for, was it 10 years you said?
Yeah.
Interesting. What about like do you ever kind of like talk to strangers, or like what do you think of that whole movement? Is it a waste, or is it something that people should try and do?
No, I think everyone should do it, and yeah, just on that as well, because I was almost 20. I was 19, but like almost 20 when I met my wife. So that was like about 2 years of me sort of being single and like going out and like getting really hard into, and I don't know if you've heard of it before, but I found this book called The Game by Neil Strauss.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to, you know, the red pill is what it's known today as. And I just fell in love with it. So I really, because like I said, I've always been kind of introverted. So to be able to read like almost like a manual of this is how you socially interact with people, specifically women, and get success, I was just like, yep, cool, drank it up. So yeah, I was doing cold approaches, and I worked in a sales job as well at around that point. So I was quite forced to get out of my comfort zone and talk to people and really do all that. And a lot of it happened with door knocking as well, because I had a job where I had to go and door knock. And again, as an introvert, it's one of the biggest things, like most hated things that I've ever done. Just because, you know, you're forcing yourself to talk to complete strangers. But at the same time, I think it's one of the most rewarding skills that I ever developed, because I'm basically, you can put me in any social situation and I'll never be the social butterfly who goes around and talks to everyone, because like I said, I'm still more than happy just to be on my own, but I can at least do that if required. You know, I can go up to and talk to anyone, I can maintain a conversation, I can do everything without fear, basically. And that's only because of all those cold approaching, you know, be that, you know, women to try to pick them up, you know, in like bars, nightclubs, or even like day game I did as well, you know, like running up to random women on the street. I did that, and yeah, it was, and both in a dating context and in a sales sort of professional environment, you know, cold calling, both on the phone and door knocking face to face, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think having that level of exposure, like I said, I hated a lot of it, just because it was really against my personality, but I'm really glad that I actually did it and pushed myself out of the comfort zone, because yeah, I just know now that, God forbid, if I was to become single again, I wouldn't have a problem going up to women and approaching them and, you know, trying to start anew if that was something that I really wanted to do. So, and I think that just gives me a level of confidence in my own relationship and just out, you know, my career as well. You know, I can just go up to people and talk to them, and, you know, whatever needs doing, I can pretty comfortably execute without the social anxiety that comes with it for a lot of people. So yeah, I'll always be appreciative of that. Yeah.
100%, man. And I love how you've highlighted the difference between social anxiety and being an introvert, because I think that's often seen as the same thing in the modern world. Like some people are like, oh, I never want to talk to anyone because I'm an introvert. And, fair enough. I respect that. I respect that you don't want to be out all day, talking to people. But equally, especially, like, this is a bit traditionalist, but I think especially for a man, when duty calls, when you see a girl you like, when you see a client that you want to make a sale to or you want to interact with, you have to be able to almost turn that switch on, and it takes practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that you can't, like, people aren't just going to walk into your life and make things happen. Sometimes you have to be that guy who takes that initiative, who makes the cold approach, who makes the phone call, who talks to the person or makes eye contact and smiles and sees what happens, right? So that's fantastic, man. And I think even if you don't necessarily, like, even if you are married, if you are already in a relationship, even like talking to that old man in the park or talking to the person at the checkout when you're buying some items, it seems like such like a cringe, like, oh, that doesn't make a difference activity, but you'd be surprised how much it can make someone smile. And if you put yourself in their shoes, I would love it if more people just spoke to me, even if it was quite a what's the word, quite a superficial, small talk type conversation. I think it almost, I like to think of it as disrupting the narrative. So you've got like your narrative of the day where, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to come back home, I might go out on a walk, and then I'm going to come back home, eat, and then sleep. Whereas if you can be someone who disrupts someone's narrative, where you can put that activity, okay, I'm going to talk to a stranger for a few minutes, even though that wasn't part of the plan. I love that idea of that. There's almost like a plot twist in the story if you think of your life as a story.
Yeah, definitely. And even if it's just stuff like talking to people casually at the gym, and obviously I've got no reason to talk to other girls at the gym from that hitting on them perspective, but if someone's working next to me and I'll see them pull off an impressive lift or something like that, I'll generally always make an effort of taking my headphones out and just saying, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but really great lift, just wanted to. And I've never once had a bad reaction from doing that. It's usually always you make someone's day almost, and especially, there's a couple guys who I've just walked up to and just been like, look, just have to pay respects to your physique, like, yeah, like, damn, and yeah, just their eyes light up generally, and they're more than happy to talk your ear off about it. I had one guy that I almost regretted doing that to, because I was trying to get through my workout, and he's like pulling his phone out. He's like, oh, this is where I used to compete, and was telling me all about his like steroid cycles and shit. I'm just like, damn, okay, like I didn't need to know all that, but that literally just started from me just saying, hey, like, great physique, you've obviously put the work in. And even and this happened just the other week, like my wife and I went shopping just to buy some Christmas presents for people, and while she was in trying on some clothes, I was just talking to the store clerk or whatever you call it, and I found out that she was a lawyer and my wife's a lawyer. And when my wife came out, because she overheard it and was like, oh, you're a lawyer, and then they got to talking, and then she actually found out that she actually was looking for a job in one of her best friend's firms. And so she was just like, I'll give me your number, I'll pass your details along to my friend. And like, they were able to make that connection. So I don't know what's come of it, I haven't followed it up, but just the fact that like this girl that we were talking to can now possibly have a huge like career boost. Like, she might have got a job there now just because I initiated that conversation and cared enough about just to ask, what she's doing, what she's studying, all that sort of thing. And yeah, you don't necessarily have to have, and I think that's one of the most important things, and especially back during my like pickup days, is you got to learn to be outcome independent. And even with sales as well, like, you've got to not be reliant on the outcome and sort of put all your mental energy into it. I think the best way to describe it is to have like an abundance mentality and not be sort of offended. You almost have to look at it as you're just going around offering people drinks of water. Yes. It's like, why, what's the point getting offended if you're like, hey, are you thirsty? Do you want a drink? I've got some water. And someone says no. It's like, okay, cool. Like, they're not thirsty. You know, like, why do you have to take personal offense to that? So I think you just look at it as, you know, you're just going out there and you're trying to, I guess, spread as much sort of positive seeds as possible. And yeah, a lot of the times it goes nowhere, but like just those occasional things that could sprout. And because it could always go the other way as well. You know, there could be some relationship that, like, that you're looking to, like, you know, work for a particular company, and they just happen to be the cousin or the uncle or the brother or whoever that has that right connection, and then boom, just because you made that initial effort, you can now be rewarded for it, and that could change the trajectory of the rest of your life. So and then at the very least as well, again, even if nothing happens and it goes nowhere, at least it's just a habit. It's like going to the gym. Like, going to the gym once isn't going to do anything. It's doing it day in, day out over the course of months and years. That's what's going to change your life. So same with this. If you just go out and talk to random people like every week, again, doing it once or twice isn't going to change your life, but doing it as a stacked habit for a long period of time will change your life. Yeah, I believe that 100%.
Fantastic. And I think that the most beautiful thing about this habit is that you don't necessarily have to take time out and be like, okay, I'm going to go out and cold approach. You can do it during a day. You know, like you say, you can do it during, you can almost like interlace it in between your other habits. So you're going on a walk and you can talk to someone. You're going to the gym and you can talk to someone at the gym. You're going shopping, like all these things you would do anyway. So there's almost no excuse to be like, oh, I haven't got time to cold approach. It's like, it's something you do while you're doing, like, it's almost like, put in between other habits. But I love that, and
exactly.
I love the idea of positivity as well. I think a lot of people think they have to think of like an overly like humorous, playful kind of thing, but just a genuine compliment. Like, rather than going up to a girl and be like, oh, I think you look attractive, can I have your number? Like, it's so much better to be like, think about something. What did you genuinely find attractive about her? Was it the color of her dress? Was it a particular piece of jewelry she's wearing? Was it her hair? And just be honest. And when you can do that, I don't know if it's something about girls, but they can almost sense the authenticity in your voice, you know, and your tone, and just the fact that you've gone to that like slightly higher level of thinking of a specific thing is really good. And also the thing about the gym, you know, you're complimenting someone's lift and their physique, which is something they've earned rather than like, you know, something they were born with necessarily. So I love that idea of think about something that they've had to work for, or something like, you know, an action that they've had to take, and focus the positivity on that rather than, oh, you're attractive. So I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that. The last couple
definitely.
of things. Go on, sorry.
Oh no, I just said definitely. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Amazing. The last couple of things I wanted to talk about were finance and fitness. So let's start with fitness. Your YouTube shorts of fitness do pretty fantastically well, and I saw your video about your bulking journey. Rather than asking, you know, how have you done that, what exercises would you recommend, let's focus on why. You know, why do you think fitness is an important thing for men specifically, or just for people in general? Like, why is it important to strive for a healthier body rather than just being like, oh, it doesn't matter?
Yeah. So yeah, I've only been going to the gym for about 2.5 years now, and yeah, it's honestly changed my life in so many different ways. It's probably more than I can possibly explain here. I did make a video on my channel, I think it's called My Fitness Journey, that kind of explains the story in, I think it's like 10 or 12 minutes or something. But in a nutshell, the reason I started going was that so my wife and I could do the Dirty Dancing lift at our wedding. So it was literally, it began with just that because she really wanted to do that. And she basically said, you know, you're going to have to go to the gym, like you're going to have to be strong enough. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I can lift you. She was only like 45, 50 kilos at the time. And I thought, oh, you know, that'll be fine. I can do that. And then, yeah, so we did it, like we practiced just one time, like holding it, and I couldn't hold her. And I was just like, fuck. So I realized at that point, okay, because she'd been nagging me to go to the gym for like years, because she'd always been into it. And she'd been always saying, you know, come. And I'd be like, no, like, because when we lived together, especially when she'd go to the gym, that was my like prime alone time. So I could like play video games without her nagging me. So that was just like golden time for me. So I'm like, no, never, like, not interested. That's not to say I was like a lazy, like fat kid or anything like that. I was actually quite athletic in primary school and high school. I did play a lot of sports, and before I went to the gym, I did go for runs on a regular basis, like 2 or 3 times a week. So I wasn't unfit necessarily by any metric, and especially when Pokemon Go came out as well, I was out there running every single day playing that. So I was never unfit per se. It was just and this is something I also explain in that video. My dad was a professional bodybuilder, and he had been for like over a decade, basically. So, so I had it in my mind that, like, unless you want to be a bodybuilder, there's no point going to the gym. And because my wife at one point said she wanted to do bodybuilding as well, so I'm just like, okay, like whatever. I've seen that journey unfold before. So I basically just thought the gym was just for people who wanted to be bodybuilders, basically, or fat people who wanted to lose weight. Those were the 2 sort of categories I thought. Because obviously I'd heard of people pushing, everyone should go to the gym and stuff. And I just never really bought into it. I can't tell you why. I think it was just, again, my whole mental block of it's for fat people who look like shit and people who want to be bodybuilders. There was no in between. So, and I had no desire to be a bodybuilder, and I still don't. And because I was never in love with my body, but I didn't hate it either. Yeah. So I guess, like, and obviously most people I think would fit into this category. If they could just wave a magic wand and get their like ideal body, they would. But obviously not everyone's willing to work for it. So I did have in my mind an ideal physique, like something that I thought, oh yeah, one day I could get there. Oh yeah, one day that would be nice. But again, already being in a relationship, it's like, well, why do I need to look good anyway? Like, I'm not single. I'm not, trying to get dates. I'm not trying to like sleep around and do, like, why do I need to be attractive? So yeah, there was all that. But when I actually did start going to the gym, and for the sole purpose of just like building up some shoulder strength so I could actually lift my wife, I actually just fell in love with the process of just doing it. And I guess just having that progression and like doing the exercises and just getting better each week. Because like when you first start the gym, you just make incredible strength gains your first couple months. So seeing that progress was just really satisfying. And again, because I think I've been into video games for so long, I have always had that thirst for progression and feeling like I'm achieving something. So it just kind of filled that hole like perfectly, and I just developed a passion for it really quickly, and I've been going ever since. And yeah, really like getting into it. So yeah, now I just love it. Now it's not for any particular, like I don't plan on doing the lift again anytime soon, but it's just like a continual part of my improvement and just maintaining health and fitness, like going forward. So yeah.
I love that, man. And I love that you started with a functional goal of like having to lift up your wife rather than an aesthetic goal. Because I think the like aesthetic goals are fantastic, and if you want to look attractive, that should be a big motivation for going to the gym. But like, when does that finish? Because there's always going to be an influencer, a TikToker, an Instagram model that's going to be more attractive than you physically because they've got either they do steroids or they've got better genetics or both, right? But
yeah, for sure.
That shouldn't be a reason for you not to set like functional goals, not to go to the gym and build the physique. And I also love how you talk about progression, because I think like a lot of activities are fantastic. Like, you do deep work, you meditate, you journal, that's fantastic, but you can't visually see progress. Whereas I think the beautiful thing about the gym is you can visually see, okay, I'm lifting a heavier weight, my arms are getting bigger, my veins are starting to bulge. Like, I love that it's so visual and so visceral. I think that's why a lot of people start with the gym on their self-improvement journey, because it's the easiest to see. It's easiest to know, okay, I'm making progress. Whereas you meditate for 7 days and you might not notice anything different necessarily.
Yeah, it's hard to tangibly like quantify your progress in those areas. Yeah, for sure. Because it's just a feeling as well. Because when I first started meditating, at the end of the week, it's like, oh yeah, I feel better. But it's like, it's all just subjective. You can't, if someone was to put you under a microscope and say, okay, prove how it's made your life better, I think most people would struggle to answer that, to be honest.
Exactly, man. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about is...
Oh, sorry.
No, don't worry, man. The last thing I want to talk about is finance. So I saw a video about how you flipped a car, I believe, and you've got a full-time job as well. So tell us about what your like finance journey, like throughout your life, has looked like, and also what advice would you have to anyone watching at home who, you know, whether or not they want to start a business or whatever. What are some key like financial principles that you've learned that, because as I suppose because you're a bit older, you know, you've seen how the economy or the industry is kind of stay the same or potentially change over the years. So yeah, tell us about all of that.
So I wouldn't recommend to other people doing what I did, because there's a lot, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and fix. So to just keep it like a real summarized level, I finished high school and I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to go on and like do more school, because I hated school. So I got straight into like working full time. I always knew I wanted financial freedom and money and like passive income and stuff like that. So I decided my goal, okay, get into full-time work, save up enough money, buy investment properties, and just kind of, you know, build up a portfolio and retire early. So that was always like my sort of plan. And then that kind of got derailed after a while, because unless you have like a degree or something like that, like you're very limited in the amount of jobs that you can actually get that are high paying. So that was kind of like my mistake number one. And then I decided, okay, well, this isn't gonna like help me. So I started like doing some like online businesses and stuff like that, and none of them worked for me. But that's when I really got into like learning about, you know, sales and like reading books, and like that was kind of when I first got into personal development as well, like listening to like audiobooks and like reading books and all that sort of thing. So I think that was all quite helpful, but I ended up burning through a lot of money, like just throwing just money at like different projects and stuff, and none of them worked. And I basically, like 4 or 5 years later, I was pretty much broke. And that's like in that addiction video that I recently put up, like that was pretty much at that point where I like no future prospects. I just tried and failed in like another sort of business venture, and I was just feeling like shit about myself, because it's like, okay, I now have to get another job doing a job that I had like 4 or 5 years ago. So I was essentially worse off than I was before, and yeah, it was just a really miserable part of my life. So I ended up going to university at that point. I just thought, fuck it, I'll just go back to my original plan. So I did a entrepreneurship and accounting degree, and I've pretty much, that was about 3 years doing that. And because I lived with my girlfriend or fiance at the time, I had a mortgage. So I was basically studying full time while working a job to maintain the mortgage and to contribute and everything. So yeah, that was pretty difficult. And yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But at least when I went to university, I kind of knew that, right, I could do accounting because I was quite good with numbers and stuff like that. And I had that sort of business experience to some extent that I kind of knew basic financial principles and all that sort of stuff. So it was something that I had an interest in, and I got through it no problem. And then as soon as I graduated, I got a decent paying job in finance, and I've pretty much just been steadily like getting a new and better high paying job every year since. So I rose to earning 6 figures quite quickly. And then I did a 3-year CPA course as well. And I was doing that while working full time. So and I wouldn't, that's not for the faint hearted, doing that as well. But yeah, I was just kind of trying to maximize stuff. And then when COVID first hit, I got into like share investing. I made quite a lot of money doing that because everything just tanked and the markets were just fluctuating so much. So I jumped in and just bought a whole bunch of stuff, and like a day later it like doubled in value. So it was quite good to be able to do that. And then like you mentioned with the car, I'm just kind of looking for opportunities. And like we just sold my wife and I, the first place that we bought together, we lived in for 5 years. And just in that 5-year period, it appreciated by $100,000. So when we sold it, we got $100,000 in cash, basically for doing nothing. So I'm just always looking at opportunities like that to jump in and sort of help the financial situation. And yeah, that's something before I get back into work as well. I want, because we've got quite a lot of savings lying around now. So yeah, I want to be able to get into more investments and do that sort of thing as well. Because my ultimate plan, and same with my wife, like we do still want financial independence and security and freedom and all that sort of thing. But I think the biggest, not lie necessarily, but it's perpetuated. Like you look online and all these like gurus, quote unquote, make it look like it's really easy. Like I swear, like every second video I get when I'm watching YouTube is like some fucking jerk off saying, oh, you can make $1,000 a day by like buying my course and everything. And it's like I've done those things. It like, yeah, sure, it works for maybe less than 1% of people. But you just realize it's a very well disguised pyramid scheme. Basically, they don't make their money by doing what they say they do. They make their money by selling these courses and getting chumps like you who are like, oh yes, $1,000 a day, sign me up. Like that's how they make the bulk of their money. So yeah, I'm a bit cynical when it comes to all that. And I think the best piece of advice I can offer, and again, for me to spend my life around from being 30 grand in debt when I was 24 to now being 30. And I think I posted a video a month or two ago saying, you know, we've hit this milestone, we've got $100,000 in cash saved up in our bank account. To go from that to here is just such a huge turnaround. But again, that's just through hard work. That's not me, you know, tricking or, you know, cheating the system or anything like that. It's just literally, I decided not to be a jerk off anymore, not to just chase all these instant money making activities. I went to uni, got a degree, got a high paying job, and just saved like crazy. That's basically the secret. And obviously having a wife as well who like pretty much, you know, matches me in income enables us to save a lot quicker as well. And a lot of guys who are single, obviously, like I'm able to save twice as much money as someone who's single just because it's joint income, you know. So for me to save $100,000 might have taken me twice as long, but because of my wife, you know, we're able to have that joint income. We can buy houses quicker and set up investments and, you know, funds and stuff like that for our daughter now as well, which we're looking into. So yeah, but I think there's no magic shortcuts, I guess, is the key message there. You just got to like put your head in and do the hard work, basically. And yeah, there were plenty of times, like I said, when I was studying, because I was still working part-time when I was at uni and then working full-time when I was doing my CPA. Yeah, there were a lot of times you just felt like killing yourself, you know, but it's just suck it up, you just do it and get it done. And now I'm reaping the rewards of that, you know, so.
100%, man. I think there are so many like online businesses or like, you know, kind of investments that you can do which are far lower risk. And I think a lot of people kind of, like you say, have this glorified idea of, okay, I'm going to invest in this and it's going to bring me this much money back. But they don't realize that investment is like, you know, a risk. It's a money that they're basically putting on the line that will very likely just, they'll never see again. Whereas things like property, things like buying a car, you know, even things like starting a YouTube channel. I know you're nearly at the monetization amount, and you know, who knows, that could blow up at some point. There are so many things which are low risk, either in terms of they've been tried and tested before, like buying cars, buying property, or they're low risk in terms of, okay, I don't have to invest any money in my YouTube channel, and it might, again, even if it doesn't bring you ad revenue in bucket loads necessarily, it might bring you a connection or you know, improve that skill that you can use in work. And that's what I like to promote, is like work on skills, work hard. Don't think I'm going to cheat the system, I'm going to make passive income. Because if you could, then, you know, millions of people already would have done it, and that's not happened. Or otherwise, we'd all be financially free, right? Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Matt. There's one last thing I want to talk about, a very quick one. What would you bring to the forefront of the viewer's mind? Anything from this conversation that you think is the most important, or anything new you want to add?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think most people know what they need to do. They just don't do it. So whether they are thinking in their minds, oh yeah, one day I'll have my dream body, or one day I'll start investing, or one day I think just having that mentality of like, you need to start it today or yesterday is probably the one key thing. Because again, like, my big regret is not going to the gym like 10 years ago. Like, the other things I regret is, as I said, like screwing around doing all these quick fix passive income business ideas that only ended up, I was just always looking for the shortcut, whereas the answer was just put in the hard work and set yourself up long term. So I think just having that discipline, start working on yourself, don't look for shortcuts, just put the hard work in, and it'll eventually pay off. I think that's the big key thing.
You led me on very nicely to the outro of my videos, which is, to take action, to stop watching videos, including my videos, including Matt's. I mean, definitely go and check out Matt's videos, but at the end of the day, it's up to you at home who's watching. Try things, take action, but the more you overthink, the more you consume, the harder it becomes to make any significant progress. And with that said, thank you for coming on the podcast, Matt. And for anyone watching at home, stop watching stupid videos like this one. There we go.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries, man. Look forward to doing this again at some point soon, definitely.